As the afternoon sun timidly filters through the worn curtains of Elena's small apartment, the weight of her struggles becomes almost palpable. At 70 years old, every wrinkle on her face tells a story of relentless hardship and sacrifice. But today, her life takes a devastating turn when the knock on her door reveals a cold, unyielding landlord, Ricardo, who delivers the crushing news of her eviction. Elena's heart aches as she faces the harsh reality of losing the home she's held dear for 15 years. With tears threatening to fall, she clings to a precious necklace, a symbol of her past and a promise to her lost son, Ricardito. As the night envelops the city, Elena's world collapses into a sea of uncertainty and despair, contrasting sharply with the hopeful dreams of a life she once fought so hard to build. But the story doesn't end there. Fate has a way of turning the darkest moments into unexpected encounters. A month later, as Elena is seen begging on the streets, Ricardo's world shatters when he recognizes a familiar necklace, one that once belonged to his mother. What unfolds is a powerful reminder of the enduring strength of the human spirit and the profound impact of compassion. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. In the dimming light of the late afternoon, Elena's tiny, aging apartment was bathed in a melancholic glow, as if the sun itself was mourning the pain that filled the room. At the age of 70, Elena bore the weight of countless trials and sacrifices etched into every line of her weathered face. Yet that day, her burden seemed to grow even heavier, as the soft knock on her door reverberated like a thunderclap in the oppressive silence that enveloped her. With hands that trembled uncontrollably, Elena slowly unlatched the door, revealing Ricardo, the landlord. His icy, unfeeling gaze and his impeccably tailored suit were a stark and painful contrast to the meager surroundings of her home, embodying a chilling indifference to her plight. Mrs. Elena, you are aware of the reason for my visit. Ricardo's voice was a cold, unfeeling monotone that cut through the room. Elena's heart thundered in her chest, the weight of impending despair pressing heavily upon her. Please, Mr. Ricardo, she pleaded with a voice quivering on the edge of breaking. I need just a few more days. My pension has been delayed. Ricardo's face remained impassive. We've had this discussion before, he interrupted curtly. A month without payment is unacceptable. You have until tomorrow to vacate. His words were like the final, unforgiving blow in a brutal storm. Elena's eyes welled with unshed tears, but she fought desperately to keep her composure in the face of this merciless figure. Please, she implored, her voice a fragile whisper of desperation. I've lived here for 15 years without fail. I've never missed a payment. Have some compassion. Ricardo's gaze swept over the room with contempt, as if her home's modesty was an affront to his privilege. Rules are rules, Mrs. Elena. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be. As the door closed behind him, Elena sank into her worn armchair, her body crumpling under the crushing weight of defeat. Her eyes fell upon a photograph of a young boy, her son, who had been absent from her life for decades. With hands that shook from the depth of her anguish, Elena reached for a cherished necklace tucked away in a nearby drawer. It was her most treasured possession, a fragile glimmer of light in the enveloping darkness of her life. She pressed it to her chest, each bead and charm a poignant reminder of the day she was forced to make the most agonizing choice of her life. I swear to you, my dear child, she whispered into the space, her voice thick with grief, I will never part with this. It's all I have left of you. As the city fell under the shroud of night, Elena meticulously packed her few meager belongings. Each item, though small, was imbued with a memory, a fragment of a life now confined to a few hastily packed boxes. The necklace remained close to her heart, a constant symbol of her loss and a beacon of the strength she still needed to summon. Outside, the city surged on with its unyielding, impersonal rhythm, oblivious to the heart-wrenching drama that unfolded within that modest apartment. For Elena, however, time had come to a halt, and what once seemed like a hopeful and uncertain future now loomed as a vast, terrifying void. 3 decades earlier, Elena's life was a tumultuous whirlwind of aspirations and hardships. At the age of 40, her eyes gleamed with fierce resolve as she traversed the bustling streets of the city, each step a quest for any opportunity that might lift her from her struggles. Her 10-year-old son, Ricardito, was the beacon of her existence, the very essence of her perseverance. On that fateful morning, Elena awoke before the crack of dawn, her heart heavy with both love and exhaustion. She prepared a modest breakfast for Ricardito with tender care, dressing him for school with a loving kiss on his forehead. "Be good, my darling," she murmured. "Mommy will be back soon." As the first rays of sunlight timidly kissed the horizon, Elena arrived at the textile factory. The atmosphere was thick with dust, and the cacophony of the machines was almost overwhelming. She labored tirelessly, her spirit unwavering despite the sneers and derogatory remarks from her supervisor and colleagues. Every peso she earned was a step toward a brighter future for her beloved Ricardito. By noon, she hastened to clean houses in a posh neighborhood, where her employer, Dona Mercedes, greeted her with her usual disdain. "Elena," she snapped, "yesterday there was dust on the cabinet. Today I expect perfection, or I will reduce your pay." Elena nodded silently, her cheeks flushed with shame as she swallowed her pride and focused on her work. Her mind wandered to Ricardito. Had he eaten enough at school? Was he completing his homework? As the afternoon sun blazed relentlessly, Elena sold empanadas in the crowded plaza. Despite the oppressive heat, she maintained a bright smile for every customer, carefully hoarding each coin with dreams of a better life for her son. Exhausted, she finally made her way home as dusk settled in, only to find the apartment steeped in silence. "Ricardito," she called out, her voice trembling as a lump formed in her throat. She discovered him in bed, burning with fever, his small face flushed and pale. "Mama," he whispered weakly, his eyes clouded with discomfort. "I don't feel well." Panic surged through Elena like a cold wave. With no money for medicine and no one to turn to, the weight of her loneliness and helplessness was crushing. In that moment of despair, Elena remembered Don Ramon, the notorious neighborhood loan shark. Everyone spoke of the dangers of dealing with him, but with no other options, Elena felt cornered. Wrapping Ricardito in a blanket, she ventured into the night, her heart heavy with fear and determination. The streets seemed darker and more menacing than ever, but the fierce love of a mother drove her forward. She was ready to confront any peril, face any challenge, in a desperate bid to save her son from suffering. As Elena made her way towards Don Ramon's decrepit dwelling, she absently stroked the necklace around her neck, a precious relic from her late mother. "Grant me strength," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, as she braced herself for the monumental decision that lay ahead, a choice that would irrevocably alter their lives. The atmosphere in Don Ramon's domain was suffused with a pungent odor of mold and desolation. Each step Elena took seemed to echo with a sense of dread, her fingers clutching the necklace as if it were a sacred charm against the looming darkness. Don Ramon greeted her with a smile that was all too sinister, his eyes glinting with a cold calculation. "What brings you here, Elena?" he inquired, his voice dripping with a syrupy menace that betrayed his underlying hostility. Elena's throat tightened as she fought to keep her composure. "I need money for medicine," she managed to say. "My son is gravely ill." Don Ramon's scrutinizing gaze fell upon her, assessing every aspect of her frail form. His eyes then shifted to the necklace that hung around her neck. "That piece would make an excellent collateral," he said, a smirk tugging at his lips. "No," Elena said firmly, her voice wavering with desperation but resolute. "I cannot part with this. I will do whatever it takes, work extra hours, anything." After a grueling and tense negotiation, Elena emerged from the loan shark's place, burdened with a significant debt, but clutching the much-needed money. She rushed to the pharmacy, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the shopkeeper prepared to close. With the medicine secured, she hurried back home, her heart pounding with hope and fear. Upon arrival, she found Ricardito still sleeping fitfully, his small body racked with fever. Elena administered the medicine with a gentle hand, her touch tender as she stroked his burning forehead. "You'll be all right, my love," she whispered soothingly, more for her comfort than his. The following morning, Elena trudged to the factory, her face marred by dark circles and exhaustion. In a lonely corridor, her path intersected with Don Carlos, the supervisor, who blocked her way with a predatory smile. "Elena," he said, stepping uncomfortably close, "you look quite worn out. Perhaps you'd like to come to my office? We could discuss a raise." Elena recoiled, her stomach churning with anxiety. "No, thank you, Don Carlos. I'm content with my current position." Don Carlos's demeanor hardened into a grimace. "Think carefully, Elena. It would be unfortunate if we had to let you go." Her day was a fraught balance of evading Don Carlos's unwanted advances and worrying over Ricardito's recovery. During her break, she took out the cherished necklace and gazed at it, drawing strength from the memory of her resilient mother who had faced countless adversities with grace. Returning home, she found Ricardito's condition somewhat improved but still frail. "Mama, why do you work so hard?" he asked with innocent curiosity. Elena enveloped him in a heartfelt embrace, her voice thick with emotion as she answered, "So that you can have a better future, my darling." That night, as Ricardito drifted into a peaceful sleep, the weight of the remaining money and the looming debt with Don Ramon pressed heavily on Elena. She stared at the necklace once more, contemplating the possibility of parting with it, but the memory of her mother's enduring spirit stayed in her hand. "I promise you, Mama," Elena whispered into the quiet night, her voice filled with determination, "I will keep fighting for Ricardito, for you, for myself." As the city slumbered on, oblivious to the heart-wrenching battle unfolding within Elena's small apartment, she lay down, utterly exhausted but resolute. She knew that each new day would bring fresh challenges. But she was steadfast in her commitment to preserving the hope of a brighter future for her son. Days bled into weeks, and Elena's life became a relentless sprint against time. Each day a struggle to keep her dreams for Ricardito alive amidst the unyielding pressures that surrounded her. Each morning, before the first hint of dawn had touched the horizon, Elena roused herself from sleep with the relentless rhythm of a mother's devotion. She prepared Ricardito's breakfast with tender care, then hurried off to the factory where the oppressive atmosphere had only intensified. Don Carlos's advances were growing increasingly brazen, his eyes lecherous and his remarks laced with an unsettling edge. One fateful afternoon, as Elena scrubbed the floors in Dona Mercedes's opulent home, she overheard a conversation that struck terror into her heart. Dona Mercedes, in her usual disdainful tone, spoke to a guest, her words slicing through the air like a blade. "Did you hear about the recent raid?" Dona Mercedes remarked, her voice dripping with casual cruelty. "They're targeting the children of single mothers, whisking them away to orphanages. They claim it's for the children's good." Elena's heart thudded in her chest, each beat a frantic reminder of what was at stake. The very idea of losing Ricardito, her precious son, was an agony beyond measure. That night, as she cradled Ricardito close, her embrace was fiercer, a vow to shield him from any harm. Yet the shadow of debt loomed larger each day. Don Ramon's threats escalated as his enforcers began to show up at her door, their menacing presence a constant reminder of the danger she faced. "Remember," Elena, one of them, sneered, "Don Ramon always gets his money, one way or another." In a desperate bid to keep her head above water, Elena took on a grueling night shift at a dimly lit bar. The hours were interminable, and the patrons often treated her with callous disregard, but each meager tip was a glimmer of hope, a step closer to repaying her crushing debt. One evening, utterly spent from a grueling shift, Elena stumbled upon Ricardito sitting on the steps of their building, his small hands clutching a box of chewing gum, which he was selling to anyone who passed by. Shock and horror washed over Elena. "What are you doing out here, my love?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I wanted to help you," Mama Ricardito said, his face set with a resolve that belied his tender years. "I see how hard you work for us." Overcome with emotion, Elena sank to her knees, enveloping her son in a tight embrace, her tears soaking into his hair. The weight of guilt was unbearable. What kind of future was she providing for him? As the night settled and Ricardito slept fitfully, Elena retrieved the cherished necklace from its hiding place. She held it under the dim light of the moon, which filtered softly through the window. The necklace's gems flickered with the ghosts of a brighter past, echoing promises and hopes that seemed to grow more elusive with each passing day. In the hushed silence, Elena spoke to the necklace, her voice quivering with desperation. "What should I do, Mama?" she whispered, as though the necklace might offer guidance or solace. Her heart ached as she made a heart-wrenching decision, one that would carve deep scars into her soul. The necklace, a symbol of her enduring love and her past, would be the key to the next step in her desperate struggle. The weight of Elena's decision was almost unbearable as she led Ricardito toward the adoption agency, each step feeling like a step away from her own heart. Her hands trembled as she clutched the old card, her mind a whirlwind of regret and sorrow. She glanced at Ricardito, his face lit up with innocent excitement, his every word a fresh wound in her heart. Inside the agency, the sterile environment felt alien, a stark contrast to the warmth and chaos of their modest apartment. The woman from the agency greeted them with a practiced smile, though her eyes softened as she took in Elena's tear-streaked face. "Hello," the woman said gently, trying to bridge the chasm of emotion with her calm demeanor. "I'm Ms. Jenkins. We're here to help you through this process. If you need a moment, we can wait." Elena shook her head, feeling as though she was moving through a fog. "No, we should do this now," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't delay the inevitable, couldn't risk her son seeing her wavering. Ricardito, still brimming with unspoken questions, clung to her hand. Elena could barely meet his gaze, afraid that if she looked too long, she might break down completely. She led him to a small room with toys and cheerful decor, an ironic juxtaposition to the heaviness of the moment. Ms. Jenkins began explaining the process, her voice a soothing balm to Elena's frayed nerves. As she spoke, Elena's mind drifted to the countless sacrifices she had made, each one a testament to her love for Ricardito. This last, desperate act was born from a heartache that couldn't be fully understood. Ricardito's wide eyes darted around the room, taking in the surroundings with a mix of curiosity and confusion. He turned to his mother, seeking reassurance. "Mama, when will we go home?" Elena fought back the tears. "Not today, sweetheart. This place is for you to meet some new friends. They're very nice, and they want to help." "But why can't we go home together?" Ricardito's voice wavered. Elena knelt, her heart breaking with every word she spoke. "Because, my love, sometimes we have to make very hard choices. I want you to have the best life possible, and this is the best way I know how to give you that." Ricardito's lower lip trembled, but he nodded, trusting his mother's words even as confusion clouded his young face. Elena hugged him tightly, feeling as if she were parting with a piece of her soul. As Ms. Jenkins gently guided Ricardito away to start the initial introductions, Elena stood alone, her heart shattered into a million pieces. The walls of the agency seemed to close in on her, their stark, clinical neutrality offering no comfort. The finality of the moment washed over her, and Elena sat down in a quiet corner, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. She clutched the necklace, its once vibrant gems now a dull reflection of her despair. She whispered into the space around her, "Forgive me, Ricardito. I hope one day you will understand why I had to do this. I love you more than anything. Always." Elena sat there, lost in her sorrow, as the city continued to hum outside, oblivious to the heartache unfolding within those walls. Each minute felt like an eternity as she grappled with the profound sense of loss and the hope that, despite everything, Ricardito's future would be brighter than the one she could offer him. Elena stood before the grand mansion, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and trepidation. The opulence of the Montero residence was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. She could scarcely imagine her son, once so small and vulnerable, now living amidst such wealth. As she stared at the manicured lawns and the imposing facade, memories of Ricardito's childhood flooded her mind. She remembered his laughter, his tears, and every sacrifice she had made to ensure his well-being. The thought of him now living in such luxury brought both comfort and pain. Determined but anxious, Elena took a deep breath and approached the mansion's entrance. She had no idea how to even begin this conversation, but she knew she had to try. As she reached the gate, she was met by a uniformed gatekeeper. "Excuse me," Elena began, her voice trembling. "I'm looking for Ricardo Montero. Is he home?" The gatekeeper regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Ricardo is currently in school. May I ask who is inquiring?" Elena hesitated, struggling to find the right words. "I am an old acquaintance. I have some important information for him." The gatekeeper's expression softened slightly but remained guarded. "I'll let Mr. Montero know about your visit. Please wait here." Elena stood by the gate, her mind racing. She could see the well-kept garden and a glimpse of a luxurious interior through the windows. The longer she waited, the more her apprehension grew. Moments later, a sleek car pulled up to the mansion, and a distinguished-looking man stepped out. The gatekeeper exchanged a few words with him, then gestured for Elena to come forward. "Hello," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm David Montero, Ricardo's father. I understand you have information about my son." Elena shook his hand, her palms clammy with nervousness. "Yes, I do. My name is Elena Garcia. I'm Ricardo's biological mother." David's face remained polite but grew noticeably more serious. "Please come inside." The grandeur of the Montero home was even more apparent as Elena stepped inside. The opulent decor seemed almost surreal compared to the modest surroundings she was used to. David led her to a quiet study and offered her a seat. "Elena, please tell me what you know," David said, taking a seat opposite her. With a deep breath, Elena began to recount the story of her and Ricardito's difficult past, her voice breaking as she spoke of their separation. David listened attentively, his expression softening as she described the sacrifice she had made for her son's future. "I've kept track of him from afar," Elena continued, her voice choked with emotion. "I've seen how happy and well cared for he is, and I couldn't bear to keep this from him any longer. I wanted him to know where he came from, even if it meant he might not want to see me." David was silent for a moment, clearly processing the information. "Ricardo has always been aware of his adoption, and we've tried to give him the best life possible. I'm sure this news will be a lot for him to take in. I need to discuss this with him and see how he wishes to proceed." Elena nodded, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. "Thank you for understanding. I just wanted him to know that I never stopped loving him and that I'm sorry for what happened." David offered a reassuring smile. "I'll make sure Ricardo knows everything. It's up to him now how he wants to handle this." As Elena left the mansion, she felt a glimmer of hope mixed with the lingering sadness of their past. The weight of uncertainty still pressed heavily on her, but she took solace in knowing that Ricardito would have the chance to learn the truth. The days that followed were a blur of waiting and anticipation. Elena continued her daily routine, trying to stay focused despite the turmoil inside her. Each day felt like an eternity, her thoughts consumed by the possibility of reuniting with her son. Then, one evening, as Elena was returning from work, she received a phone call that set her heart racing. The caller identified himself as Ricardo Montero. His voice, though calm, carried an undercurrent of emotion. "Ms. Garcia," he said, "I'd like to meet with you. There's a lot to talk about." Elena's heart soared and sank at the same time. She agreed to meet him, and the encounter was set for the following day. As she prepared for the meeting, she clutched the necklace once more, hoping that the memories and the love it symbolized would guide her through whatever was to come. Elena's heart ached as she listened to the heated exchange between Ricardo and his adoptive father. Each harsh word seemed to cut deeper, unveiling a side of her son she had hoped never to see. The warmth she once knew in him seemed lost, replaced by a hardness she struggled to comprehend. The argument ended with Ricardo storming off, leaving Mr. Montero standing in the garden, visibly shaken. Elena waited for the tension to subside before emerging from her hiding place. Her mind raced with questions and fears about her son's current state and the choices that had led him here. As days turned into weeks, Elena continued her quiet vigil. She saw Ricardo increasingly consumed by his work, driven by a relentless pursuit of success and power. Despite his outward confidence and the luxurious lifestyle he led, there was a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction and anger that seemed to follow him. One afternoon, Elena saw Ricardo sitting alone in a park near the mansion, his usually impeccable suit rumpled, his face etched with worry. Taking a deep breath, she approached cautiously, feeling a mix of apprehension and hope. "Mr. Montero," she called softly. Ricardo looked up, surprised. "Yes, can I help you?" Elena's heart raced as she fought to maintain her composure. "I'm the gardener from the property next door. I just wanted to check if you were okay. I've noticed you seem troubled lately." Ricardo's gaze softened, and for a moment, the veneer of control cracked. "It's been a tough time. The business is falling apart, and I feel like I'm failing everyone." Elena nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes it helps to talk to someone. I'm here if you need a listening ear." Ricardo seemed to appreciate the offer. "Thank you. It's been hard to trust anyone, but I suppose everyone needs someone to talk to." Over the next few weeks, Elena and Ricardo developed a quiet, unexpected friendship. Their conversations were often brief, but they provided a glimmer of solace in Ricardo's tumultuous life. Elena learned more about the pressures Ricardo faced and the burdens of living up to his adoptive family's expectations. During these moments, Elena found herself grappling with the decision she had made years ago. Seeing Ricardo struggle made her question whether her choice to remain hidden had been the right one. She wanted to reach out more, to help him directly, but feared the consequences of revealing her true identity. One evening, as they sat on a park bench discussing the day's challenges, Ricardo sighed deeply. "Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a role I never wanted. I wish I could find a way to be true to myself." Elena's heart ached for him. She wanted to tell him the truth, to reveal her identity and offer him the support she had always dreamed of providing. Yet the fear of disrupting his life and the potential for rejection held her back. "You know," Elena said gently, "sometimes the hardest part is finding your path when everyone else has their expectations." Ricardo looked at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and vulnerability. "Do you think it's possible to change things, to find a way out of this?" Elena hesitated, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. "I believe that finding yourself is a journey worth pursuing. It may be difficult, but it's important to follow your path." Ricardo nodded thoughtfully, a spark of hope igniting in his eyes. Elena wished she could offer him more than just words of encouragement, but she knew that for now, her role was to be a silent support in his life. As Elena continued her work and her hidden presence in Ricardo's life, she made a silent vow to herself. No matter how challenging it was, she would support her son from afar and hope that one day he might find his way to the truth and understand the depth of her love. In the meantime, Elena found solace in knowing that, despite the distance and secrecy, she was still a part of Ricardo's life. Every interaction, every moment of support, was a testament to her enduring love and her hope for his happiness. Elena poured her heart into the letter, her tears mingling with the ink. As she wrote, memories of Ricardo's laughter and innocence filled her mind. She described her profound sorrow, her tireless efforts to ensure he was well cared for, and her constant hope for his happiness. She expressed her wish for him to remember the love and compassion that had once defined him, and to find his way back to the values she had always cherished. When the letter was finished, Elena hesitated. Should she deliver it directly to Ricardo, or leave it somewhere he might find it? In the end, she decided to leave it in a place where he might come across it by chance, hoping that it would find its way to him when he needed it most. The next morning, Elena placed the letter in a small, discreet spot in the garden where Ricardo often walked. With a heavy heart, she hoped that the letter would reach him and that he might find solace or inspiration in her words. Days turned into weeks, and Elena continued her routine. One crisp autumn afternoon, while working in the garden, she saw Sofia again. The tension in Sofia's demeanor was palpable, and she appeared to be in deep thought. Elena's heart raced with a mix of hope and fear. Could Sofia have found the letter? As Elena watched from a distance, Sofia approached the spot where the letter had been hidden. She looked around as if making sure no one was watching, then carefully picked up the envelope. Elena's heart pounded as she saw Sofia's concerned expression turn to one of deep contemplation. The next day, Sofia approached Elena while she was tending to the roses. Her expression was softer than before, and there was a glimmer of something akin to understanding in her eyes. "Excuse me," Sofia said gently. "I need to speak with you." Elena's heart raced, unsure of what to expect. "Yes, Ma, I am." "I found something that belongs to you," Sofia said, holding out the letter. "It seems important." Elena's hands shook as she took the envelope. "Thank you. I wasn't sure if anyone would ever read it." Sofia looked at Elena with empathy. "You wrote about your son, didn't you?" Elena nodded, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I did." Sofia's eyes softened. "Ricardo has been struggling. He's lost touch with what matters. Maybe this letter will help him remember." Elena's eyes filled with tears of hope and gratitude. "Thank you for understanding." Sofia gave a small, encouraging smile. "I'll make sure Ricardo reads it. Sometimes, a reminder of the past can help us find our way forward." Elena thanked Sofia, feeling a renewed sense of hope. She continued her work with a lighter heart, hoping that the letter would spark a change in Ricardo's life. Weeks later, Elena received a message from Sofia. Ricardo had read the letter and was deeply moved by it. He had begun to reflect on his life and the values he had abandoned. Though he did not know Elena's identity, he was making efforts to reconnect with his humanity and mend his relationships. Elena's heart swelled with a mix of relief and joy. Her decision to reach out, even in such a small way, had made a difference. She continued her quiet watch over Ricardo, grateful for the chance to have touched his life once more. As the seasons changed and time moved on, Elena found solace in knowing that she had done everything in her power to guide her son back to the values of love and compassion. Her journey was far from over, but she had faith that, in some way, her love had found its way back to Ricardo, and that was enough to bring her a measure of peace. Elena's heart raced as she prepared herself for the possibility of finally confronting her son. She knew that this encounter could change everything, but the uncertainty of how Ricardo would react filled her with both hope and fear. Over the next few days, Elena worked with renewed determination, focusing on her tasks while mentally preparing for their meeting. She used every moment to reflect on what she wanted to say and how to approach Ricardo. One crisp afternoon, as the golden light of autumn cast long shadows across the garden, Elena saw Ricardo approaching. He was alone, and for a moment she felt a pang of anxiety. This could be her chance. She took a deep breath and walked over to him. "Mr. Montero," she said softly, trying to steady her voice. Ricardo looked up, his expression guarded. "Yes." Elena took another deep breath. "I need to talk to you about something very important. It's about your past, about your real mother." Ricardo's eyes narrowed, a mix of curiosity and skepticism in his gaze. "My real mother? What do you mean?" Elena's voice trembled as she continued. "I am your mother, Ricardo. I gave you up for adoption many years ago, hoping that you would have a better life. I wrote you a letter, hoping it would help you remember who you truly are." Ricardo's face hardened at first, but there was a flicker of something else: pain, confusion, perhaps even recognition. "Why should I believe you?" Elena's eyes filled with tears as she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. It was of a young Ricardito, smiling and full of life. "This was you when you were little," she said softly. "I kept this with me all these years. I wanted you to know that I never stopped loving you." Ricardo took the photograph with trembling hands. His gaze softened as he looked at the image of the child he barely remembered. "I don't understand. Why now? Why did you leave me?" Elena's heart ached. "I left you because I thought it was the only way to give you a chance at a better life. I was struggling, and I knew I couldn't provide what you deserved. But every day I thought about you and hoped you were happy." Ricardo's eyes were filled with conflicting emotions. I never knew. I thought I was abandoned." Elena shook her head. "No, my love. I never abandoned you. I wanted the best for you, even if it meant letting go." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Ricardo looked at the photograph, then back at Elena, his expression a tumult of emotions. "I don't know what to say." Elena stepped closer, her voice pleading. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know the truth. I hope in time you can understand why I did what I did." Ricardo nodded slowly, still grappling with the revelation. "Thank you for telling me." Elena took a step back, feeling a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "If you need anything or want to talk, I'll be around. I just hope you can find peace and happiness." With that, Elena turned and walked away, her heart both heavy and hopeful. She had taken the first step toward reconnecting with her son, and now it was up to him to decide what to do with the truth she had shared. As she left the garden, Elena felt a sense of quiet resolution. She had reached out to Ricardo, and though she didn't know what the future held, she had done all she could to mend the broken connection between them. Elena's heart ached at the rawness in Ricardo's voice. She reached out, her hands trembling, as if to bridge the chasm that had grown between them over the years. "I know this is hard to hear," Elena said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you. I never meant to disrupt your life. I just wanted you to know the truth, that you were never abandoned by me. I had to make a choice that I thought was best for you." Ricardo looked at her, his eyes searching her face for any hint of deceit or falsehood. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Elena nodded, understanding his doubt. "I have memories, details that only someone who knew you when you were a child would know. I have this photograph," she said, pulling out the worn picture from her pocket. "And I have letters I wrote to you but never sent, hoping one day I could find you." Ricardo glanced at the photograph, his eyes softening for a brief moment before the hard shell of his emotions closed back over them. "I don't know what to say." Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know the truth. I understand if you need time to process this. I'm here if you want to talk or if you have any questions." Ricardo nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of contemplation and pain. "I need some time. This is a lot to take in." Elena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Of course. I'll be here, whenever you're ready." As Ricardo turned and walked back toward the mansion, Elena stood there, feeling both a sense of relief and deep sadness. She had finally spoken her truth, but the future was uncertain. She could only hope that, in time, Ricardo would find it in his heart to understand her and see the love she had always held for him. Elena returned to her small room, feeling an emptiness that was both heavy and liberating. She had taken the step she felt was right, and now it was up to Ricardo to navigate the path ahead. That night, as she lay in bed, she looked at the photograph of Ricardo, feeling a mixture of sorrow and hope. She prayed that one day, her son would come to see the truth, and that their fractured bond could begin to heal. In the days that followed, Elena continued her work in the garden, each day a test of patience and longing. She waited for a sign, a word, or any indication that Ricardo was beginning to process the truth she had shared. And then, one chilly afternoon, as the first frost of winter began to touch the garden, Elena saw Ricardo walking towards her, a look of resolve on his face. Her heart skipped a beat as she put down her tools and faced him. "Elena," Ricardo said, his voice steady but soft, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I'm still processing everything, but I want to understand more. Can we talk?" Elena nodded, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. "Yes, Ricardo, whenever you're ready. I'm here." As they sat down together, amidst the fallen leaves and the fading autumn light, Elena felt a glimmer of hope that, despite the pain and the years apart, there was still a chance for healing and reconciliation with her son. Ricardo's internal struggle deepened as he wrestled with the revelations that had turned his world upside down. The news of his biological mother, Elena, had stirred up a maelstrom of emotions he had long suppressed. His heart, once hardened by years of ambition and success, was now confronted with the raw truth of his past. He found himself lost in old photographs, looking at images of a child who seemed so distant from the man he had become. He remembered the carefree days of his youth, the laughter and love he had once known, and struggled to reconcile those memories with the person he was now. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the garden, Ricardo made a decision. He needed to understand the woman who had brought him into this world and why she had made the choices she did. He needed answers not just to the questions about his past, but to the deeper questions about his humanity. The next day, Ricardo approached Elena in the garden, his expression softer, yet still guarded. "Elena," he began, his voice uncertain, "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation. I'd like to hear more about what you've been through, about why you made the choices you did." Elena looked up, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "I'm grateful you want to talk," she said softly. "I know it must be overwhelming. I only want to share with you the truth of what happened, so you can understand why I made the decisions I did." They sat on a bench in the garden, the autumn leaves swirling around them in a gentle breeze. Elena began to recount her story, the hardships she faced, the pain of having to give up her son, and the years of longing and regret. She spoke of the love she had never stopped feeling for him and her hopes that he would one day find happiness and fulfillment. As Elena spoke, Ricardo listened intently, his eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and empathy. He began to see the sacrifices his mother had made and the depth of her love, which contrasted sharply with the coldness he had felt in his own life. Elena's voice broke as she described the years of separation and the yearning she felt. "I always hoped that one day you would understand why I had to make that choice," she said. "I wanted you to have a better life than I could provide at that time. I see now that it was a difficult path for both of us, but I never stopped caring about you." Ricardo's face softened as he took in her words. He began to reflect on his own life, recognizing the void that his relentless pursuit of success had created. He realized that in his quest for power and wealth, he had lost touch with the values of love and compassion that had once been so important to him. "I've been so focused on building my empire," Ricardo said quietly, "that I lost sight of who I was and what matters. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you for not understanding sooner." Elena reached out, placing a comforting hand on his. "It's never too late to find your way back to what truly matters. We both have a lot of healing to do, but I believe we can start anew." Ricardo nodded, a sense of resolve settling over him. "Thank you for being patient with me. I want to take this time to understand myself better and to reconnect with the values I've lost." As they sat together, the sun setting behind them, a sense of peace began to emerge. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long while, Ricardo felt a glimmer of hope that he could rediscover the goodness within himself and build a bridge to the past that could lead to a brighter future. Elena's heart raced as she saw Ricardo standing there, the weight of their shared past and unspoken words hanging between them. The garden, usually a place of quiet and solace, now felt charged with anticipation. Ricardo took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice steady but soft. Elena nodded, her hands trembling as she put down her gardening tools. They walked over to the bench where the new coat had been placed, the gesture now a poignant symbol of their fragile connection. They sat in silence for a few moments, the crisp air around them amplifying the gravity of their conversation. Ricardo finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about who I was and who I've become." Elena's heart ached with the anticipation of what might come next. "What have you decided?" she asked quietly. Ricardo looked down, his fingers nervously tracing patterns on the bench. "I've realized that I've been running away from my past, from the person I used to be. Seeing you here and thinking about everything you went through, it's made me question everything." Elena's eyes filled with tears as she listened. "I never wanted to cause you pain, Ricardo. I only wanted you to have a better life. I wanted you to be happy." Ricardo looked at her, his eyes reflecting both sorrow and a growing understanding. "I know now that you did what you thought was best. It's hard to reconcile that with the anger and resentment I've felt. I didn't want to face the truth because it meant confronting parts of myself that I'd buried." Elena reached out, placing a comforting hand on his. "It's okay to feel that way. Healing takes time, and it's a journey we'll need to take together. I'm here to help you with that if you're willing." Ricardo nodded, his expression softening. "I want to try. I want to understand who I am and where I come from, but I need your help." Elena's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and relief. "I'm here for you, Ricardo, whatever you need." As they sat together, the garden seemed to embrace them in a warm, hopeful light. The pain of the past was still there, but so was the possibility of healing and connection. For the first time in years, both mother and son felt the faint glimmer of a new beginning, one that could bridge the gap between their past and their future. Ricardo took Elena's hand in his, a silent promise to face the challenges ahead together. They both knew that the road to reconciliation would be long and difficult, but in that moment, they found solace in the simple act of reaching out to one another. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the garden, Elena and Ricardo started to talk, sharing stories of their lives, their fears, and their hopes. The journey was far from over, but with each conversation, they took a step closer to understanding and healing, ready to face the future together. As Elena spoke, her voice filled with warmth and nostalgia, Ricardo listened intently, absorbing every detail of the life he had been separated from. The stories painted a picture of a childhood rich with love and joy, contrasting sharply with the coldness he had come to know. Ricardo's expression gradually shifted from skepticism to something softer vulnerability mixed with a dawning sense of understanding. When Elena described a particular moment, a memory of a family picnic where Ricardo had playfully splashed water on her, Ricardo's eyes glistened with emotion. "Mom used to tell me that story," Ricardo said quietly. "She said I was always a mischievous little boy. I'd forgotten those details." Elena smiled through her tears. "Yes, you were quite the little rascal. I remember every moment of it." The afternoon sunlight cast a gentle glow over them, creating a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. For a brief moment, the heaviness of the past seemed to lift, replaced by the fragile beginnings of connection and healing. Ricardo took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I'm starting to understand your decision. It doesn't erase the pain, but it helps me see why you did what you did." Elena reached out and touched his hand. "I'm grateful that you're willing to try to understand. I only wanted what was best for you." Ricardo nodded slowly. "I appreciate that. It's just, there's so much to process. I'm trying to reconcile this with everything I've built for myself, the life I have now." Elena's eyes shone with compassion. "I understand. And I'm here to help you navigate through this, however long it takes." Over the following weeks, Ricardo began to spend more time with Elena. Their conversations grew deeper, and the walls between them continued to come down. They shared meals, explored memories of Ricardo's early years, and slowly started to build a new relationship based on understanding and mutual respect. One day, as they walked through the garden together, Ricardo paused and looked at Elena with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about the necklace," he said, "the one I lost. I know it meant a lot to you and me." Elena nodded. "It was a symbol of family, of our bond." Ricardo took a deep breath. "I want to find a way to honor that bond, to make up for lost time. I can't replace the past, but maybe we can build something new." Elena felt a wave of emotion. "I'd like that very much, Ricardo. We have a chance to create new memories, to rebuild our relationship." Ricardo smiled a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'd like that too." As the days turned into months, the bond between Elena and Ricardo continued to strengthen. The garden, once a symbol of their separation, became a place of healing and connection. They worked side by side, planting flowers and sharing stories, each moment a step toward a future that, while uncertain, was filled with hope and the promise of new beginnings. Elena stood there for a moment, her heart heavy with the weight of their conversation. The garden, with its blooming flowers and gentle breeze, felt like a haven amidst the turbulence of her emotions. The truth, while painful, had opened a door she thought was long closed. Sophia's presence was a comforting anchor amid her emotional storm. "Thank you for everything," Elena said quietly. "I couldn't have come this far without your support." Sophia offered a reassuring smile. "Ricardo is a complex person, but his willingness to listen to you shows that he's beginning to confront his past. It's a step in the right direction." Elena nodded, her eyes still following the direction in which Ricardo had left. "I just hope he can find it in his heart to forgive me, and that we can build something meaningful from this point forward." Sophia placed a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. "It will take time, and it won't be easy. but you've already made an impact by reaching out and sharing your truth. Now it's up to both of you to take the next steps together. As the days passed, Elena continued to work in the garden, her spirit uplifted by the small but significant changes in her relationship with Ricardo. She noticed him lingering more frequently, sometimes stopping to watch her from the terrace or engaging in brief conversations about the garden. One evening, as they worked side by side planting new flowers, Ricardo spoke up again. "I've been thinking about those Sundays at Oak Park," he said thoughtfully. "I'd like to go back there with you. Maybe it can help me remember more." Elena's heart leaped at the thought. "I'd love that," she said, her voice filled with hope. "It could be a way for us to reconnect with the past and create new memories." The visit to Oak Park was a deeply emotional experience for both of them. As they walked through the familiar paths and reached the old swing, memories of happier times flooded back. They took turns pushing each other on the swing, and for a brief moment, it felt like they were reclaiming the childhood joy that had been lost. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, Ricardo turned to Elena with a look of newfound understanding. "I realize now that no matter how much time has passed, the bond we shared as mother and son never truly vanished. It was always there, waiting for us to find it again." Elena smiled through her tears, embracing the moment. Yes, it was, and now we have the chance to rediscover it. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but Elena and Ricardo were committed to taking it together. With each shared moment and each step forward, they continued to rebuild their connection, finding solace in the gradual process of healing and rediscovery. For Elena, the park visit marked a turning point. It symbolized the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, patience, and the possibility of a future where she and Ricardo could once again be a family. Elena watched as Ricardo's eyes glistened with the intensity of a long-suppressed emotion. The simple act of humming his childhood lullaby seemed to bridge the years of separation and sorrow, reawakening a connection that had lain dormant. "Thank you," Ricardo said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that." Elena's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and joy. "I'm glad it brought you some comfort. I always hoped that one day you would remember and understand how much you were loved." Ricardo looked at her with newfound appreciation. "I've been trying so hard to reconcile my life now with the memories from my childhood. It's been a struggle, but seeing these photos, hearing the lullaby, it's helping me piece together who I am and who I used to be." Elena nodded, her eyes still moist. "It's a journey, Ricardo. We're both learning to navigate it, to find our way back to each other." As they continued to look through the photo album together, Ricardo seemed more at ease. He shared stories about his adoptive parents, their kindness, and the ways they had shaped his life. Elena listened intently, her heart aching with both sorrow and gratitude. It was a bittersweet revelation of the life her son had lived, filled with love and support from another family. Later that day, as they were finishing up in the garden, Ricardo turned to Elena with a thoughtful expression. "Would you be willing to spend more time together? Maybe we can start by revisiting some of the places from my childhood. I think it would help me understand more about myself and about us." Elena's heart leaped at his offer. "I would love that," she said warmly. "We can take it one step at a time, and I'm here for you every step of the way." The next few weeks were filled with visits to places that held significance in Ricardo's childhood, each outing bringing them closer. They went to the beach where he had built sandcastles, the park with the old swing, and the library where he had spent hours reading. With each visit, they shared stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. The barriers between them began to crumble as they discovered more about each other's lives and experiences. Ricardo's initial hesitation gave way to a growing openness, and Elena's hope for a renewed relationship with her son blossomed. One evening, As they sat together on the porch of the Montero mansion, watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of orange and pink, Ricardo turned to Elena with a smile. "Thank you for being patient with me, for helping me remember the past, and for building a new future with me." Elena reached out and took his hand in hers. "Thank you for being willing to see me, to reconnect with me. This is just the beginning, but it feels like a beautiful new chapter." As they sat there, the warmth of the sunset and the closeness of their shared moments brought a sense of peace and fulfillment. The road to reconciliation was still long, but with each step, Elena and Ricardo were weaving a new tapestry of their relationship, one built on understanding, love, and the promise of a future together. A small velvet box. He sat back down, his face a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "I wanted to give you something," Ricardo said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a locket. "This was my grandmother's," he explained, looking at Elena with a hint of apology in his eyes. "I found it when I was going through some old family heirlooms. I wanted to give it to you. It belonged to your family too." Elena's eyes widened as she took the necklace in her hands. The locket was intricately designed, and as she opened it, she saw a tiny portrait of a woman she recognized as her mother. Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she looked at Ricardo. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "This means so much to me." Ricardo nodded, his expression softening. "I thought it was time for us to start sharing more of our lives. I know I've been distant, but I want to change that." Sophia reached out and placed a comforting hand on Elena's arm. "We all want that," she said gently. "This is a new beginning for all of us." Dinner resumed with a renewed sense of connection. The conversation flowed more easily, with Elena sharing stories of her life and Sophia and Ricardo offering glimpses into theirs. There were moments of laughter and some tears, but the overall atmosphere was one of warmth and understanding. As the evening drew to a close, Elena felt a deep sense of gratitude. The meal had been more than just a gathering, it was a step toward healing old wounds and building new relationships. When it was time to leave, Ricardo walked Elena to the door. "I know it won't be easy," he said softly, "but I'm committed to making this work, to getting to know you and building something new together." Elena nodded, her heart full. "I'm committed too. Thank you for this opportunity, Ricardo." As Elena left the Montero mansion that night, she felt a profound sense of hope and fulfillment. The journey ahead would have its challenges, but with each step, she felt closer to bridging the gap that had long separated her from her son. The path to reconciliation was still unfolding, but now, with Ricardo and Sophia's support, she could face it with renewed strength and optimism. As we wrap up this emotional journey with Elena and Ricardo, we've witnessed a powerful story of reconciliation, healing, and new beginnings. Through their heartfelt interactions and the courage to face past wounds, we've seen how even the most challenging situations can lead to profound connections and understanding. What about you? What has this story taught you? How can you apply these lessons in your own life? We'd love to hear from you. Share one thing you've learned from this story and how you plan to bring it into practice in your daily life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories and content. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.